marketing used to control the brand fully, but it's just not the case anymore. I think obviously with the rise of social media, it's broken that monopoly and you can run the most beautiful campaigns in the world. But if your BOPUS order is wrong or every in-store return is a huge fight, your customer is going to tell 500 people about it before they even walk out of your store.
Cailin, as VP Customer Experience at NewStore, you worked with a lot of global brands. You also have a lot of experience with omnichannel, and you've also spent a lot of time understanding the customer behavior, both online and in stores. So you're really the perfect person to ask. Who do you think has more impact on the brand? Is it the marketing or is it the operations?
I think it's a really great question. And I think the honest answer has changed a lot over the last decade. I came up in retail, as you kind of were just alluding to. I've worked for small boutique brands like in store and in back and front of house at major US department store. I spent years in retail consulting, and I'm now on the platform side at NewStore. The pattern that I keep coming back to is that marketing used to control the brand fully, but it's just not the case anymore. I think obviously with the rise of social media, it's broken that monopoly and you can run the most beautiful campaigns in the world. But if your BOPUS order is wrong or every in-store return is a huge fight, your customer is going to tell 500 people about it before they even walk out of your store. So your greatest marketers today are your customers. And I think that what they're marketing is not your marketing vision, what you've put out there, but it's really your operations. They're marketing against the reality of what's happening in your stores, what's an actual lived experience. So when you ask who has more impact, marketing or operations, I think marketing sets the vision, it sets the invitation, but I think that your operations really writes the reviews.
Love it, love it. I 100% agree. So what I'm hearing is, customers don't really see your inventory systems. They don't see your fulfillment workflows, and they honestly have no idea what store operating tools you're using, right? But they feel the impact of it every single time they shop in your stores, right? So within the hierarchy of all possible, operational decisions, which do you think shape up the customer experience the most today?
I think this is the question I'd want every retail leader or every CEO to really sit with before they start making decisions about unified commerce or omnichannel, what their direction is. Because honestly, like candidly, I don't think there are really obvious answers, what I'm going to share with you. I don't know if it's which system do we buy or how fast can we ship. I think those are kind of downstream decisions that are made. And I think more upstream, I came up with like 3 that I think are really strong and that I see over and over again in the industry. The first one is a decision around, are we actually running one business or are you running a bunch of different channels pretending to be one business, right? It's an org decision, and it's actually even a comp decision because it makes its way down to the associate experience. So if your e-com team and your stores teams are battling it out for inventory, or if they have opposing goals and opposing KPIs, your customer actually ends up feeling that really strongly in the stores or even in their e-com, experience on your website. The brands that really made the decision to be one business, not just saying that they're one business, not saying they're unified, but actually are doing the work, are the customers that, or are the brands where customers talk about seamless experiences in the store, right? The second, I think you're going to like the most because it's how much do you trust your inventory? I think inventory really sets the stage for everything else, and inventory accuracy. When I was consulting, it was all about like what foundational data, like is your foundational data good? And there was a lot of time spent kind of managing the data. I think for retail, it's really inventory is that role, right? Like, is your inventory accurate? Can you trust your inventory? You're basically betting on your inventory to be accurate to improve your customer experience day in and day out. And then the third one I think is your frontline empowered to be your brand. And this
Mhm.
comes down to, are they operating as just checking people out, and then you've got one person back of house and one person front of house, and everyone's fitting into like a really neat role? Or are you empowering them with like technology and even just your business values to really own the entire experience and be a
Mhm.
business owner, right? Flip the switch and flex into operational or sales roles. And then all of those decisions, I think, are then supported on by the technology that you decide to layer on top of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what I heard you say is, you know, the the channels that you're going after and how do they sort of sit in together and operate together,
Mhm.
and do not have conflicting metrics for different personas that work across your supply chain. So that is one. The second I heard you say is around inventory trust. How,
Mhm.
um, you know, and then the third is around associates and how do you empower your associates and make them most effective. So let's double down on the inventory trust aspect, Kaylin. I have seen brands make a decision of, okay, we will go do the omni-channel route, right? We want to start doing fulfillment from the stores and but that comes with a cost, right? What are some of the foundational stuff that um, you know you would recommend retailers to take care of as you go the omni-channel route? And the reason I ask this question is I've come across retailers who are like, oh, we want to go omni-channel, and their inventory accuracy is absolutely off the rail,
Yeah.
right? So maybe tell us more about that, and what have you seen with your with the experience with the store, spend time that you've spent in the stores.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this was most prevalent when I spent a lot of time in implementations. So that was during consulting. And even at NewStore, I was pretty heavily involved with implementations early on. So years ago, when unified commerce was new and people were really thinking about this, a lot of people had disparate systems that they were calling unified commerce. So, NewStore was one of the first companies that really did unified commerce correctly, which is super exciting for us.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but I spent a lot of time almost taking this consulting hat with a lot of our customers. And one of the things that I would harp on and we would talk about a lot was like, okay, now that you're about to go live, you're cutting over. Um, have you done a full count? Your inventory is so important. The inventory accuracy is so important. So the people that I found were the most successful were the ones that were like, took that really seriously
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
did full counts for each store before turning on NewStore, before going live, so that they had that baseline of inventory accuracy. And it actually reverberated, right? Like it had major downstream impacts. So the people that didn't do this, they're struggling even 6 to 12 months out because what you've done is you've put a lot of garbage numbers in your system. You've turned on a system that is so unified and trusting all of the data that you put in, and you're getting like mispicks, right? Like crazy at all of your stores. And these have real impacts like in canceled orders. They are impacting even your payroll because you've got a bunch of people on the floor back of house who are searching for this item that's actually not there. You've got a terrible customer experience because you're canceling order after order, or the people in store are saying like, oh, hey, do you have this shirt in a small? And you're like, well, it says I do, but I don't know if I do, and let me go in back of house and check, right? It ends up, and then, that also has impacts on just how the associate feels about the system in their
Mhm.
business. Like, can they trust this? Are they going to be able to tell the customer this item is here, let me go grab it, or this item is at another store, I can order it for you, and feel
Yep.
really confident that they're creating a positive customer interaction? So those are some of the things that I've seen. And I think, like I said, the things that I talked about the most during an implementation was, do you trust your inventory? How are your backup house operations? Even things that you might not control, like your warehouse, right? Shipping to you, a lot of people on a 3PL. Okay, is your warehouse accurate? Are they at like 90% accuracy? Because those are the types of things that end up being so important and then have ripple effects for months or even like years on, because fixing that is really, really hard, right? And you're in the business of
Yep.
RFID and inventory accuracy too.
Yeah, yeah, 100%, Kailin. And I think that is precisely why when, we were building up G Store like 4 or 5 years back when we started off, the first realization was, everybody is doing Omni, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. But do they have the right infrastructure in place?
Yes.
Do they have the right level of inventory accuracy? Do they have the ability to find the product very easily, right? Does that technology give them that framework? Those were some of the building block questions that we kept asking ourselves. And there were two routes to take. We could take the handheld RFID route
Mhm.
because a lot of retailers had invested in RFID, so RFID had naturally started to become like the base for us to get started. We had the option of taking the handheld RFID route or the option of sort of making it even more elaborate, right? And we chose the latter because um, it was more difficult, right? And for more than a decade, overhead RFID technology existed, but nobody was really able to operationalize it. And what we essentially see as an output, and now a lot of vendors and a lot of our competitors and people in the industry are doing this, where it's you sort of creating like a Google map for your store inventory, right? So you precisely know where your inventory is, your accuracy is great. I love how H&M did this, right? So H&M, they really wanted to go omni-channel, but they did not directly launch omni-channel, right? They did not start fulfillment from their stores until they got their inventory accuracy right. So their idea was, I think their accuracy was somewhere at a 90%
Mhm.
mark, which is pretty good if you think about the industry standards.
For
If you look at
a store like H&M too, honestly.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for a brand like H&M, which is so fast fashion, there is you know such big stores, and the amount of footfall they get in the stores is huge. So for them, 90%, 91% accuracy was great, but they really wanted to get to 98%, right? So their entire premise was that we want to get to a 98% accuracy and then only start fulfillment, right? Another aspect that you talked about is the cost associated to false fulfillment or order cancellations, right? There is an aspect of how much time does it take to fulfill, right? And what is your order cancellation rate? So, you know, uh, for a lot of brands, like what is Cailin, NewStore does this, does a lot of omni-channel fulfillment. They do a lot of fulfillment from stores. What is the benchmark of order cancellation rate that you see? And, before right, and then how does it how what targets do you usually recommend, and how do you see it improve?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's take the in-store idea and like what the KPIs are around in-store fulfillment, right? We talked about earlier how there's payroll implications when you're asking for things that are actually not on the floor. So and there's also this kind of like idea for us at New Store around a system being intuitive and easy to use. So we do focus on a lot of like what's your mispick rate, or how easy is it to fulfill, how quickly is everybody fulfilling, and then how accurate. And I think New Store does the intuitive part well. That's like kind of our bread and butter. We're always looking at the actual pathway for associates, like you're going to click these boxes, all of the experiences, like the associate experiences on the app. So I think that's a main piece of it too, is like, can you hand this device to anybody and they can start this fulfillment process, right? We don't have a ton of H&Ms. We do have larger retailers that are churning pretty quickly, but our focus is more on luxury or luxury adjacent
Mhm.
market. And those customers are actually thinking about limits. So no one wants to do a ton of store fulfillment, I've noticed, right?
Mhm.
They want most of the fulfillment to go to their warehouse because that's where they've hired people specifically for store fulfillment. So the focus for most of our customers is like fulfill as much as we can from the DC.
Mhm.
And then all of those extra orders that cannot be fulfilled, that's what ends up at stores. So the stores
100%.
aren't like a major player in the fulfillment game, or they try not to be. So we focus on, most of our customers want to be at about 10% of their e-com or their, endless aisle orders fulfilled from store. If it gets too much, they're knowing, that the assortment is off, or that something's going on in DC, and they've got inventory in the wrong places. So it's interesting because a lot of people are like, oh, you do all of this in-store fulfillment. Like, that's actually not our goal at NewStore, and it's not our goal for most of our customers. They want to do fulfillment correctly at the right locations with the right product, right? And it's more important that the product gets to the right store and and it gets sold there. So I could give you some of the numbers, but I feel like it's a little bit different when you're thinking about kind of like these more luxury adjacent customers. But I will say, like, if I see people under or over like 10% of those digital orders being fulfilled in stores, then I'm saying, like, hey, we have to think about what's going on with your fulfillment strategy.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense. And w- the other angle that you mentioned, Kailin, is around empowering your store staff, right? How do you sort of make them more effective? How do you utilize their capacity the best? In fact, you almost touch the aspect of making them like the real brand ambassadors, because that's who the customer really interacts with. So tell us more about that. How is new stores, or generally in the industry, how are people looking at empowering their store associates better?
Yeah, I think this is so important because it's such a fun job, and I see so many of our customers doing it right, where like you're hiring these people, they are your brand ambassadors, but they're also like your business owners, and they're doing everything, right? They're running a little small business for you in the grand scheme of like your larger business. So, one of the things I think that we are super focused on, and I know that most of our customers are they think about their customers, obviously, but then they also think of their associates as their customers. And at NewStore, we think of the associates as our customers as well, right? Like,
Mhm.
are we giving them the ability to have an intuitive experience on the device? The other thing that I think is really important and that impacts the customer experience so greatly is true unified commerce. I think in the past, right, it was, and even when I worked at, my large department store days, this was 15 years ago. So this maybe didn't even exist from a technical perspective at the time, but they were the first to do unified commerce. But it was, okay, this system does this, but this thing does this. And you're on the same device, but you're kind of switching back and forth. Oh, hey, I can do a endless aisle order from our website, but it's actually a separate transaction to your in-store order. I think giving the associates the ability to flip and put different hats on
Mhm.
to meet the customer's need is actually the most important thing that your technology can do, and the most important thing you could do for your customer experience too. So having even, New Store is on an iPhone, we're iOS first,
Mhm.
and our app, in one app, you're doing your inventory. You so like, doing your cycle counting and taking in your orders. You're also selling, you're also clienteling all in the same app. But a lot of our customers, right, they want a modular experience. So it's like, we want you for this, but we don't want you for this other thing. So the
Mhm.
thing that's the most important then for us is either being able to have extensibility on our platform to pull in those pieces that you want the
Mhm.
associate to be able to experience, or have other apps on the phone. So you're not switching to like a computer, from a phone to a computer. You're switching just in the actual app. So I think having less touch points and more, I won't even say consolidated tech, because I think it's still fine to do best of breed and figure out what's the best solution for us. But I think those integrations end up being then incredibly important, right? And it all trickles down to that customer experience.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think from what I'm also seeing in the industry, which is really helping empower the store associates, is there are two sides of the coin that an associate deals with, right? One is the clienteling side or the customer facing side of it. It could be for walk-in customers, or it could be for BOPIS fulfillment, or order handovers, and or helping fetch inventory in nearby stores and stuff like that. So anything that touches the customer. And then there is everything that you do to ensure that your store is set up right and you have the right inventory in the right place at the right time and in the right quantity, and you're putting the right stuff together so that they get a sense of how you can pair it and stuff like that. So those are the two types of activities that associates do. A lot of brands or a lot of technology providers are bucketing associates as back store associates or front store associates, or are also saying these are omni people who are focused on omni fulfillment, right? And um, what I'm seeing being most effective across all the different brands that we have deployed is that if you make the store associate effective with exact curated recommendations of what to do, when to do, and how to do it, the outcome is absolutely phenomenal. Because as an associate, now I'm not worried about, oh, my shift is telling me to do this, or this is what I need to take care of. I am getting the right sort of notifications. And of course, those notifications cannot be 200, right? They cannot even be 20. They have to be like literally couple of notifications in terms of, okay, at this point in time, take care of omni orders at this point in time. And
Mhm.
of course you can have your staff tagged across various different categories. So for example, 3 out of your 10 associates are the omni people, and then 5 out of those are five others are they can switch between back and front, whereas the rest are purely like front store staff, right? And then within that category of people, how do you ensure that they get the right task in hand so that they can uh, be most effective? And in fact, now with so much data that you're getting, right, with camera vision, with RFID, with heat maps of various types, with POS data feed, if you amalgamate all of that, Kailin, there is absolutely phenomenal amount of curated workflows that you can create, so that the as an associate I can truly be the brand ambassador. All I care about is, okay, is my customer getting the right experience, vis-a-vis me worrying about, okay, what does my store manager want me to do? So
Mhm.
I'm seeing that being very effective. We've tried different permutations for different brands.
Yeah.
What is something that you're seeing around? What are more people doing with data? Maybe I think that is an interesting space where people are really focusing and curating experiences.
Yeah, I think that's a great question too. And like we've chatted a little bit about in the past, we had back of house associates, we had front of house associates. Some of the stuff that you were even just talking about in my mind historically has been kind of like an HQ role too, of like, is the inventory in the right place at the right time? And, what I saw back in the day, like not to age myself, like 15 years ago, was like, when there were cuts, it was the operations staff that got cut, right? They were the first to be cut, and that was always the case across all the
Mhm.
customers. And I think that now with the access to data and access to this technology and the changing role of like from store associate, front of house, back of house, or we are turning them into right an omni-channel associate instead. So you may have people that are who are specialized in a specific area too, but I think the ability to flex these business owners, these omni-channel associates, for lack of a better term, to where they're needed at the right time. One, it meets all of the needs, because what would happen is you would cut back of house staff, right? Thinking
Mhm.
like, oh, we still have people on the floor to help the customers, like everything's fine. But I think this entire conversation has showed that like your inventory, all the operations, everything that's happening behind the scenes is truly impacting the customer experience in major ways. So you're cutting the people that the roles that you deem less important to keep your customer facing roles, but those are actually your most important roles. Although you still need someone to be in front of the customer. So I think the technology has made us able to, give people the right tools in their hand to flex into what the business needs at the particular time. And I'm really excited to see from your data part of this question, like, where does AI come in? I'm so hesitant to ever like throw AI around because I think it can mean so many things, and it's ever evolving, and we're talking about things all the time at NewStore of like how we want to evolve with this. But using that data in meaningful ways. And some of the biggest changes that I've seen over the years too are these associates who, we ring, we greet customers, we ring, and that's kind of the job, becoming business owners because of the access to data and the access to real-time data, right? And in the past, you kind of just like, you got your numbers the next day and like, great, I guess we did well yesterday. Now, if you have the right BI tools and the right integrations and you're collecting all of your data and creating these like genuine insights for your store teams in the moment, they can make these decisions, right? They can own the business and say, all right, we've got 50 fulfillments back of house. It's super slow. Flex, you guys flex. You're getting notifications about what to fulfill first. So a lot of it is like, okay, what are the priority orders, right? That's also really important, is making sure you're servicing your best customers or servicing those orders that need to be like same day shipped. So having insight into all of that, being able to help with prioritization of work, and then really quickly being able to pull people and flex them to sell in the moment is really important too. And I haven't seen a ton of this creating specific workflows or telling you what to do when. I think that would, like, if you have access to all of the data that you need, I think that would be such an interesting way to go, because it takes this omnichannel associate to the next step, which is like, all right, you actually don't need someone kind of like micromanaging your workday. You're going to know based on the data and based on like probably notifications, like the next thing to do. Right.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree. Another direction that Cailin, I remember, at an RF, you were on stage, and I happened to be one of the listeners as you presented the uh, the group together. One of the key takeaways that I felt from that conversation was how retailers really want to maximize from the technologies that they've already invested in, right? So one of the questions that I'm super curious about is, where do you see the exact challenge, right? Why are retailers sort of struggling to get the most of it?
Yeah. I think a lot of systems have, and just for viewers here to know, like we talked about, with the uncertainty in the global markets, right? We don't have a lot of people going out and saying like, oh, I want to do a transformation project right now. That's not on the top of everybody's mind. What is on the top of everyone's mind is like, let's maximize what we currently have. Hey, if we're not adopted in specific features, we got to get that adoption, right? Because here's the ROI. So I see people doing that. I also see a lot of our customers mega focused on ROI in general, right? Hey, if I'm gonna spend any time on this thing, you need to tell me what I'm gonna get out of it. What is the benefit to me? All right, I'm gonna spend $10,000. Tell me when I'm gonna make that $10,000 back, and then I'll start prioritizing this project. In the past, it was like, we all have to get here because it's a customer experience baseline, right? So we have to do it. We know it's going to give us some value. No one really cared about the numbers that much. Although I care about the numbers, I feel like we're seeing customers with incredible ROI across the board from moving towards unified commerce. But people just were, much easier with their money. So now I think what that NRF panel was talking about is like, okay, we've got these systems in place. We're going to maximize it. So in my mind, that means one, like the adoption thing. Am I totally adopted? And then on the other side, it's also a technology issue. I see this in my day-to-day too, of systems being really closed off or not being able to speak to other systems. So you're getting little silos of data. And I think the winners in this next phase, right, because people are thinking about maximizing their current tech stack, are the software providers that are going to allow flexibility, uh, extensibility, are going to play well with others on the playground, right? Like you've got to be able to all talk together because, as we've discussed, like data and inventory are foundational. Um, it needs to be incredibly accurate. And sometimes that takes a bunch of systems all speaking together to get to that number. So I think you'll see people really focused on how flexible is your platform? Can it speak to all my other friends and can it play nice with them? And am I getting absolutely everything I can from your platform? Like what have I not adopted? What is going to give me that ROI? And I'll, invest in this small project on your platform if you can tell me what I'm going to see in return.
Absolutely. But I think one thing that I'm also seeing, Kailin, and maybe share your perspective on that as well, as technology providers, I 100% agree, flexibility, ease of integrations, right? Yeah, it's some of the platforms, even the headless aspect of how headless your system can be depending on the need of the brand, right? So all of that, those are great check marks, things that you can check mark. And as vendors or as solution providers or as service providers, you can really take care of them. But then there are things that are completely out of your control, right? Things that are more in control of the retailers, right? So how many store associates do they have? If they've initiated an omni strategy, do they really have the right staff to cater to it? If not, then how are they going to operate around it, right? So maybe tell me a little bit about how can brands evolve, or what are some of the things that they should be taking care of so that they can really make the most of the technology they're investing in and
Yeah.
not only depend on the vendor doing the right thing.
Yeah. I hear that. And I know you said not relying on the vendor to do the right thing, but I think we've got a bunch of really tech savvy workers in the industry, like Gen Z. I mean, I'm a millennial, like even millennials, like grew up with technology. They
Yep.
know how to use it. But it has to also be intuitive. And I think that is on the vendor side, right? That's on you as a software provider to have like the most intuitive technology that you can so that you don't have to take a bunch of time to train people.
Mhm.
Kind of just hand them the technology and they'll know instinctively what to do with it. I think that's a big piece of it. Whenever I see people creating SOP documentation or spending a ton of time training or sending out a lot of emails about like new stuff on the platform, I'm like, you don't have to do any of that. Like this
Yeah.
person is probably 28 years old. They're going to pick up that phone and they're going to be like, okay, like I obviously like know what to do, right?
Exactly.
It's pretty obvious. So I think it's then really more about instilling trust in your associates and making sure that they're on board with this like vision. Because right way back to the beginning when we were talking about the operations being the customer experience, like if your associates have been burned because they feel it the most, right? They're in front of someone who's unhappy and yelling at them. If they've been burned by your inventory inaccuracy, they are not going to be your best brand ambassador. They're going to be like, well, it says we have it, but like, who knows? Like, this system is never right, you know? Um, so I think that's some of the stuff that's like outside of the system that you can control. It's like, uh, you know, how does your associate feel about the brand? Do they feel supported by you? Do they trust in your technology and your data? And then I do think it is on the software to be intuitive so that you're not spending a ton of time training like we used
Training.
to do back in the it
Mhm.
used to take me weeks to train people on the point of sale system, and then they still wouldn't understand it. And they'd call in every 5 minutes to like, do a manager override or how do I get this information out? And I don't know. I'm coming from a customer group where they are hiring business owners. So the trust is there and they're not micromanaging their business owners. And I think those are the best customer experiences that I see too. It's when
And
people are excited about the brand and trust your baseline foundational technology.
absolutely, absolutely. I think you've touched some really good points, and that is precisely what I'm hearing. And And that is what sort of segregates the new age vendors from the older vendors, right? Because for
Legacy.
older
You like
vendors,
to say legacy.
absolutely, absolutely. So the legacy vendors, one of the key things that we realized while we were initiating, building G Store, is, we realized that why does the technology look so dated? Like,
Yeah,
why is it not intuitive? Why do I have to struggle to understand what to do? And with all these Gen Zs, they absolutely, they want,
yeah,
for the lack of better words, they want like an Instagram like application, right? And I
totally.
use that keyword a lot of times. They really don't want to look through scripts or manuscripts, and they don't want to sit in a room with training. They're like, okay, just hand it over to me, let me
Yeah,
figure it out, right? And that trust factor, I think millennials had a lot more. I don't say it with with a negative attitude. I genuinely say it with a lot of positivity. Millennials had a lot of patience, right? And they would give something multiple tries,
yeah,
whereas the way some of the Gen Zs have a lot more shorter attention span, and for them, to come back to something that didn't give them the right experience for the first couple of times is very hard. And I don't blame them, because they've grown up in a perfect world where technology is their friend, right? And whereas we've seen technology evolve, so it is really like we need to meet them where they are, and we need to give them technology which sort of makes them feel welcomed, right? And I have seen that difference in the adoption for retailers. So retailers, when we've done deployments, and the retailers have had certain, so there are some retailers who have a lot of very old staff, right? They have like the staff has been there for 15 years and
oh yeah,
20
we
years.
see that too. Yes.
Right. So, which is great, which is awesome. But for those brands, it's much easier because all the experience and all the knowledge, like they know, oh, this shoe is going to be kept, this brand belongs in aisle 2, shelf
Mhm.
3. Like they
Yeah,
just know here, right? Like there should be a way to extract out all of that information and put in the system, which is what technology can do these days. But for for brands which have more younger and more Gen Zs, for them it's much harder because you know Gen Zs don't know how what your stores have exactly, right? They don't know they have to go to aisle 2,
right.
level 3, right? They want something which is more intuitive, which tells them, okay, here is the pin, here is the path to it. If you're picking an order, this is the route that you take is going to give you the most optimized
Right.
picking, right? And stuff like that. And now with so much intelligent systems that you can build, it's becoming a lot more powerful, right?
Yeah.
um
And the customers are like that too, right? We've got Gen Z customers and they're expecting as a baseline that we have a unified commerce experience, right? As a baseline, they don't want to do like a different interaction and a different application to get a store to door order versus like what their cash and carry order is going to be. So we've got we have to solve for like all of these expectations, the expectations of Gen Z, the expectations of even like even the boomer generation, like their expectation of customer experience and the customer management in store is also really high. So they have a lot in common with those Gen Z customers too. Like they're expecting high touch, white glove customer experience too. So it's funny, it's very different type, but it's all got to be supported in similar ways.
100%, 100%. I think with that, Kaylin, I know you work at NewStore. Maybe tell us a little bit more about your role and what are you at these days?
Yeah, so my role is the Vice President of Customer Experience at NewStore. That means that all of our customers, from signing through all of their renewals, because they'll never leave us, that experience is in my wheelhouse. I'm looking at our customer, our personal customer journey, just as our retailers look at the customer journey in the store. And I manage our customer success team as well. We have a really, actually, I'm going to give a nice plug for my customer success team, because one of the great things about NewStore is that we are totally obsessed with the retail experience. And almost everyone on my team actually has worked in retail like I did. So we've got people that have worked at Target, you know, everywhere, like everywhere that you can think of. And we've got a product team that's also really obsessed with our customer experience and is constantly talking to our customers. So I think it's a differentiator for us. And I just want to plug it because my team's so wonderful and they understand the actual retail experience. They understand when someone comes to them, one of our customers says, like, we've got this problem, we need you to fix it. They understand it because they've been there. So that's what I'm doing at NewStore. And honestly, the easiest place to find me if you want to connect is on LinkedIn. Cailin Broccoli like the vegetable. It's not a joke. And if you like what we talked about today and it resonated, newstore.com has a lot of great information around, like, white papers or our customer case studies, what we're doing with brands that are navigating all of these problems that we basically talked about. And I'd love to hear from anyone who's interested in chatting more about technology and retail or just retail in general. That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. That brings us towards the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Cailin. It was an amazing conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was so much fun.